Hello and welcome. My name is Kate Merrind. I work at DC's Department of Small and Local Business Development. Very excited today to be having another session in our Meet DOEE series with the Department of Energy and the Environment. They have over 12 divisions at DOEE, all of which do wonderful work in sustainability, in energy efficiency, helping to make the District of Columbia a leader in sustainability and green energy. And today I'm really excited to have Iven Schröer from the Toxic Substances Division here to talk about hazardous waste. And so, Iven, I'm going to turn things straight over to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, hi, my name is Iven Schröer. I'm working in the Hazardous Substances Group, and today we have an environmental compliance and technical assistance session for hazardous waste generators. So while we are doing this today, if you have one of these hazardous waste, universal waste, or used oil products, or many others, this session would be important for you. So thank you. We have used oil. When we have an example as a repair shop, we have lead wheel ratings. We have, let me see if I can. This is, that's a laser point. All right. So we have used oil, we have lead wheel rates, we have battery acids, we have spoiled gasoline, we have fluorescent light tubes that mostly of you will have, and we have also, for example, some mercury tilt switches and many others. So if you have one of these, this would be an important session for you. So why are we doing this? So every hazardous waste and universal waste will be regulated under RCRA. RCRA means Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. It's a federal law that gives EPA the authority to control hazardous waste from the cradle to grave. EPA may authorize states to implement key provisions of hazardous waste requirements in lieu of the federal government. Here you can also see we have also some DC specific waste laws and regulations, for example, the used oil regulation, but I will come later to it. For you, important is that Department of Energy and Environmental Hazardous Waste Branch regulate any facility that generates hazardous waste, universal waste, and or used oil. So important is if you are the facility and if you generate hazardous waste, universal waste, or used oil. If you're a facility, then normally you are a very small quantity generator, a small quantity generator, or a large quantity generator. For us, because we are here in the small business training, for us, yeah.
I'm just going to jump in a little bit. There's a little bit of static on the line that wasn't here before. I don't know if there'll be anything that will maybe help the static reduce, but in the meantime, if the static continues, might ask if you could talk just a little bit slower. Just there's something on the audio that's making it a little bit hard to hear.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
No, that's fine. So, like I said, normally you are a very small quantity generator or a small quantity generator. When you are a very small quantity generator, you normally generate in one calendar month less than or equal to 100 kilogram of hazardous waste and does not accumulate more than 1,000 kilogram of hazardous waste at one site. Small quantity generators generate more than 100 kilogram but less than 1,000 kilogram of hazardous waste and does not accumulate more than 6,000 kilogram of hazardous waste at one site. The main difference is that the requirements for small quantity generators are a little bit more than when you're a very small quantity generator, but we come to it later. So how do you know if you generate hazardous waste? You need to understand what is hazardous waste. The EPA said in 2021 a hazardous waste is waste with properties that make it dangerous or capable of having a harmful effect on human health or the environment. The EPA gave us to find out what hazardous waste is. You have listed waste and you have characteristic waste. Listed waste is normally waste that comes with from an industry or from a waste production side. So for us, normally important is the characteristic waste. So if you have waste, it needs to have one of these four categories. It needs to be ignitable, a flash point below 1 minute 40 Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius. It could be corrosive with a pH less than 2 or a pH more than 12.5 It needs to be reactive. It needs to be explode, react violently with water, release toxic gases or vapors. And it could be toxic, definite through T-clip analyze. A T-clip analyze is normally a test sample that you get from an analysis laboratory. You put your hazardous, you put your waste in, send it to the analysis lab back, and they can tell you if your waste is toxic or not. So when you normally buy a product, you have normally on the backside of the product these GHS pictograms. GHS stands for Global Harmonized System. So if the product say danger, flammable, toxic, poison, warning, it has a skull and crossbone on it, picture of a fire, acid-based solvent, your product might be hazardous waste when you need to dispose of it, but might be. So how do you find out if your product that you use and now it's waste is 100% waste? So you need to go to the safety data sheet. Every time when you buy a product, the producer needs to pack the safety data sheet with you. Or when you buy it online, then the online shop needs to send you the safety data sheet, or you can download it. On the safety data sheet, go to chapter 9, and you will find the pH scale. For this specific product that are used here, the pH scale is not applicable, but perhaps we will find something out. When you see the flash point, so the flash point is 122 Fahrenheit, 49 degrees Celsius. So this product would be considered as hazardous waste because it's less, the flash point is less than 140 Fahrenheit or less than 60 degrees Fahrenheit Celsius. Sometimes the producer made the category, the hazardous waste determination on his own. So here you can see in chapter 13, disposal considerations. The product, it would be expected to meet the criteria of ignitable hazardous waste, D001. D001, when you fill out later your hazardous waste manifest, it comes on your hazardous waste manifest. But very often, when you get a safety data sheet, the producer mentioned, okay, please check your local regulations, government regulations, or state regulations. So that's why it's so important to go back to chapter 9, check the pH scale, the flash point, or do a T-clip analysis so that you can see if your waste is hazardous. Now, after you do this, after you saw that your waste is now hazardous, how to manage your hazardous waste? You already identify it, so make a waste determination on all waste. That's what you already did. So the next step is label it. And on the product or on your waste now, you need to have the word hazardous waste. The next thing what you need to do is you put the accumulation start date on the waste. So this day, when you say, okay, I don't use this product anymore, this product is now hazardous waste, this day you need to write down. Why is it so important? Because small quantity generators are only allowed to store hazardous waste for 180 days. Very small quantity generators don't have this requirement, but they can only store hazardous waste up to 1,000 kilograms. The next thing is, please put your hazardous waste in a container. So the container needs to be also labeled with the word hazardous waste. It needs to be the category on it. So, for example, if it's flammable, if it's corrosive, it's toxic, if it's ignitable, etc. And it also needs to be the accumulation start date on it. So the first item that you put in an empty box, this day you need to write on it. Then you also need to inspect your hazardous waste weekly. Only person who is trained in order to manage hazardous waste is able to inspect the hazardous waste storage weekly. So the best thing would be if you train your employees in the HAZCOM training, and then disposal it. Arrange for disposal using a licensed contractor. You will get a hazardous waste manifest. Keep the manifest for your records. So your hazardous waste manifest and your inspection logs. You need to store it, or you need to keep it for 3 years. Also important is that only a person who has a Department of Transportation hazardous waste manifest training is allowed to sign your hazardous waste manifest. So also please make sure this person or this employee is trained. So now we learned what is hazardous waste. Let's go to what is universal waste. Universal waste is a subcategory of hazardous waste that are commonly generated by a wide variety of establishments. The category was created to promote collection and recycling, ease the regulatory burden, encourage the development of municipal and commercial programs. So normally it's a recycling program. Here we have some examples. The most of you would have spent fluorescent lamps, like this here on the bottom, and some batteries, or for example also some mercury thermostats and kill switches. Why some batteries? Because alkaline batteries are not regulated. So if you have lead acid batteries, nickel cadmium, or lithium batteries, these are falling under RECOR. So how do you manage them? Universal waste lamps. First of all, contained. Put spent lamps in a drum, box, or carton. Then label the universal waste lamps. Label the carton with universal waste lamps, or used lamps. You can label it with a sticker, or you can write it down by handwriting. But please don't use the word used tubes or bulbs. Then when you first put the first item in your carton or in your box or in your drum, you also need to write down the accumulation start date on it. Then the container, drum or box or carton always needs to be closed, except when you put something in. Normally, as a small quantity generator or very small quantity generator, you're allowed to store your universal waste for up to 1 year. That's why it's so important to put your accumulation start date on it, so that you can check. And also, please train your staff. Important is, if your fluorescent light tubes or lamps are broken, they're not universal waste anymore. Now they're hazardous waste. And also, LED lights or incandescent lamps are not regulated under RECOR. So the best idea would be if you switch out every light tubes to LED lights. So then you don't generate any universal waste lamps anymore. Let's go to how to manage universal waste batteries. It's simply the same with waste lamps. First of all, label it with the word universal waste batteries, or waste batteries, or used batteries. Date it with the accumulation start date. So the first day that you say you're not able to use your battery anymore, write it down on the battery. And disposal of, you can take it up to 1 year in your facility. And please train your staff. For example, like the HAZCOM training. And like I mentioned earlier, alkaline batteries are not regulated under RECOR. Also important is, if you have lithium batteries, please tape the plus and minus pole of your lithium batteries, because normally when these plus and minus poles are come together, it's very dangerous on account of it can start a fire. So what is used oil? Because used oil falls also under RECOR, because under this DC used oil rule. Very easy is to understand what is used oil to see what is not used oil. Not used oil is waste oil that is bottom cleaned up waste from virgin fuel storage tank, virgin fuel oil spill cleanups, or other oil waste that have not actually been used, or products such as antifreeze and kerosene, vegetable and animal oil, or petroleum distillate used as solvent. All other oil would be automatically hazardous and falls under this DC used oil rule. So for example, used engine oil, used synthetic oil, transmission fluid, or used industrial process oil. So if you have used oil, how to process it? First of all, you need to label it. So when you have used oil, normally you put it in a 55-gallon drum. Label your 55-gallon drum with the word used oil. Close the 55-gallon drum always except you fill it up with oil. Then container, that's also very important. Every container, 55-gallon drum or whatever, wherever you store something, wherever you store oil, needs to be on the secondary containment. And Chinese stuff. It's also not impossible. It's also impossible to burn oil in the district. So how to stay out of trouble? First of all, you need to have an EPA ID number. So if you generate hazardous waste, universal waste, or you have used oil, you need to have an EPA ID number in the district. That's why you need to complete and fill out the form 8700-12 and submit all the registration fee to the Hazardous Waste Branch. On the last page on this list, you will find a lot of links that gets you to the 8700 form. Then identify all the items in your facility that will be hazardous. Like I mentioned, please look into your safety data sheet because then you can make the waste determination if your waste is hazardous. Then properly manage and dispose of hazardous waste, universal waste, and used oil that we learned earlier today. Then train your staff and follow the rules. Again, only person who is able to train in hazardous waste is able to manage hazardous waste. And keep your paperwork to prove you did everything right. Like I said, your hazardous waste manifest and the inspection log, you need to keep it up for 3 years. So what's happening if you don't have an EPA ID number? No EPA ID number would cost you a fine of $2,000. For example, also not properly managed regulated waste has a fine ranging from $500 to $2,000 per infraction. That's why it's always important, or it's good to know if you have a problem with hazardous waste or you're not sure how to manage it. Send us a mail, send us an email, or call us by phone, and we will help you. For us, it's more important, or for us, it's in general important to keep you in compliance. Let's go to some examples. So here, for example, we have something, it's called waste everything. So it would be a completely no-go because it doesn't mention the word hazardous waste. It doesn't have the category on it. So for example, flammable, ignitable, corrosive, etc. And it doesn't have the accumulation start date on it. Perhaps this container is closed or daunted. So also please keep your container closed. You can use the handwriting, like here, or very easy you can get these stickers with the word hazardous waste, accumulation start date, and the content of it. What's with waste lamps? So the best picture here would be this on the right side. Yeah, this picture and this picture would be also a no-go. So everything is here in a box. It's contained. The box is closed. The words universal waste lamps are on it, and the accumulation start date is on it. So everything would be okay. You can use handwriting, or you can also use these stickers. That makes it normally very easy. Let's go to waste batteries. Waste batteries always, like I mentioned, needs to be closed in a container. The container needs to be labeled with the word universal waste, use batteries, and the accumulation start date needs to be on it, like here or here. So this would be a good example. You can use also handwriting or also these stickers. It doesn't matter. This here, for example, you can also use, but you can see on this battery the accumulation start date is missing. So always please put the accumulation start date on it. Here, for example, it's very easy. So when you have used oil, it needs to be in a container. The container needs to be closed all the time, except when you put something in. It needs to have used oil on it, but something is missing. Here in the bottom you see, it's not on a secondary containment. So every time when you put something in a drum, box, or something else, it needs to be stand as a secondary containment. That's a DCE rule. When you have a 55-gallon drum and you want to put some oil in it, and it is very, or it is in general a good idea to keep the equipment on it. You can see you can close and open it every time when you put oil in it and don't spill something without this. So that's always a good idea. And like I said, always close the lid and keep it closed. Here, for example, we have also some examples for secondary containments. This here and this here are normally single wall tanks. Single wall tanks needs to be also in a secondary containment. So here, that's a brick wall, that's a sealed pavement, or you have a second wall that would be also a secondary containment. When you have a 55-gallon drum or a drum in general, this secondary containment would be enough, but always mention the pressure in this drum would be normally so high that if you have a spill or an accident happen, that the spill spilled out and don't contained in this small space area. So always make the use or choose a secondary containment that is larger than the drum. So now a short reminder. Maintain current information. Update the 8700-12 form when the contact person changes. The mailing address changes, the waste stream changes, or the generator status changes. It is free to update the information. Don't forget, that's also very important, every March or before the 1st of March every year to fill out your annually self-certification list, and you need to pay the fee. For very small quantity generators, it would be $250, or when you have less than 8 employees, it would be $100. Small quantity generators needs to pay $500, and large quantity generators needs to pay $1,000. Let's see what I can do. Show. So for example, let's see what we have here. So this here is an 8700 form. You need to fill it out and send it to the Hazardous Waste Branch. But please don't fill out your EPA ID number because you don't have one yet. After you're done, you need to go to the second one, because then you got already your EPA ID number. And you can do your annually self-certification, and you need to pay a fee, always on this page. You only need to submit, or you need to put your EPA ID number on it, and you can do it. That's very easy. Okay, other questions?
Ivan, thank you so much for this presentation. I do want to invite, I don't think I've seen any questions in the chat. If you're online and you have a question, please feel free to come off of mute. I know I have a couple, and they're smaller questions. I think my first question goes back to the lamps. And I know there was a mention that when you are storing the lamps, that they should not be referenced as tubes or bulbs, but they should be referenced as lamps. Could you explain why that is?
Because bulbs can also use for other items. That's why.
Okay.
So when you use universal white lamps, everybody is on the same page what lamps are or what lamps mean. That's why.
Okay. No,
also the same with tubes.
Got it. No, that's very helpful. And then I know you made reference to stickers that people may be able to use. That handwriting, as long as it covers everything, is okay, but there are potentially stickers. Are those stickers something that people can find a way to purchase them through DOEE? Are there standard websites for that? Where would someone go about finding these stickers?
You find the stickers normally in every hazardous waste shop or waste shop in general. Or you can also Google it online, hazardous waste stickers, and you find it very easily.
Wonderful. There's a question that came in, which is, do restaurants need an EPA number?
Restaurants would have an EPA ID number if you have hazardous waste, universal waste, or used oil. So, for example, if you have fluorescent light tubes and not LEDs, and you didn't switch it out to LEDs yet, yes, then you would have an EPA ID number, because then you would be a generator of universal waste. Or if you have some hazardous waste on site, some used oil, or some used batteries, then yes, you would have an EPA ID number. You need to submit the 8700 form. You need to fill out your annually self-certification, and you need to pay the fee.
And then there was a question that came in regarding fines. If you could talk about when fines might happen and how much those fines are. If someone is, well, we'll go back, and there's a clarification actually before I get to that question. When we're talking about used oil, the question is, does cooking oil count as oil for hazardous waste?
Let's see where we have. So here it is. So here you see vegetable and animal oil are not used oil. So it's not hazardous waste.
Okay. So in general, cooking oil would not be considered hazardous waste.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I don't know, Ivan, if this is a question that you could answer, and maybe it is something that somebody could provide. Maybe Mary Lynn, you might know this. If someone is looking to dispose of cooking oil, are there resources from DOEE to help people think about how they are disposing of that?
I can't speak to that off the top of my head, but we could certainly find out the answer.
Okay. I will share, I've already shared Ivan's information in the chat. I will share Mary Lynn's as well. And I know we have some additional staff at DSLBD who also support a lot on sustainability. So if you are in restaurants, if you're looking at how to dispose of something that is not on these lists for hazardous waste specifically, we can still look into finding information about how to support the disposal of other types of materials. Coming back to the question I was going to ask a moment ago, Ivan, could you say a little bit more about when a fine might be applicable, how much those fines might be?
Yes, sure. Let me go to the fine page. So, I mean, it depends. Normally, when I go out as an inspector or my coworkers go out and we find some findings, then normally we gave the people 5 to 10 days to fix the problem. Depends if the problem is easy to fix or they need a little bit more time. Like I said, for us, it's much more important to that the facility or any facility that generate hazardous waste, universal waste, or used oil is back on compliance. Honestly, I'm not from the monetary side. What means when you need to pay the fee or when it comes to it, but I can reach out and give you an update.
And this is Barbara Williams with the Hazardous Waste Branch. So I'll just jump in real quick in regards to the fines. So there is in our regulations, there is actually a fine schedule. So depending upon what the violation is, it determines what the fine amount is. We have different classes of violations. So depending on if it's a class 1, class 2, or class 3 violation, depends on the actual penalty amount. And as Ivan was saying, we usually give an opportunity for you to cure a violation before we actually get into a penalty. So usually an inspector goes out, they're going to identify issues that they found and give you 5 to 10 days to correct. If you do not correct it within that time frame, then we issue actually what we call a notice of violation. And the notice of violation will tell you you have X amount of days to correct it. And if you don't, what the penalty amount will be at that time.
Barbara, excuse me, Barbara, thank you so much. That was very, very helpful. I see that we have a new message. Let me go check, see if that is another question. I think we just, okay, there are no additional questions. If anybody else on the line has a question, please feel free to ask it now. Otherwise, we're coming in on time. So I'll just pause a moment and see if anybody wants to unmute. It doesn't sound like it. So I want to say a really big thank you to Iven, also to Barbara Williams from DOEE and Marilyn Wilhair. This is part of a series, once again, with the 12 divisions of the Department of Energy and the Environment, of the many different things that they do that interact with businesses and support businesses in different ways as DC looks to continue to be a leader in environmental sustainability and energy efficiency. I just want to say thanks everyone for being here. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Thank you.